Hey everyone, welcome to React tutorial video number 2. In today's video, we are going to be covering page structure and React Router. Let's jump into it. First, navigate to your terminal where you will be in your project folder. I know that I'm in my project folder because first the name React tutorial, which is the name of my project from last video. Also, these files should be the same if you're following along. In terms of page structure, there are many different ways to create this page structure. I'm going to organize by page. So if I navigate into my source folder, I'm going to see a whole bunch of files. So the first thing I want to do is create a separate folder for my JavaScript files. So mkdir or make directory, which is a folder. And then I'm going to hop in JS, and I'm going to create a separate folder for each page view. I'm going to start off with a landing page and a dashboard. Right now, I won't be building any of the UI or functionality. It's just going to be the word landing and the word dashboard, just so we can tell them apart. So I'm going to create a folder for each, mkdir, landing, mkdir, dashboard. All right, cool. And then each landing and dashboard, or really any component, is going to have a home file that's for that component. Everything gets routed through this home file. So I can create a file with touch, landing/landing.jsx. JSX is the React version of JavaScript file. I'm going to do the same for dashboard. All right, cool. And then I'm also going to create a master one called routes. So mkdir routes touch routes. All right, cool. So now if I navigate to my VS Code, I should see this show up. So dashboard has a dashboard, landing, and routes. Good. Now I'm going to fill them in with very basic skeleton React code. So the first thing we need in any file, so for a file, we have a choice between a class component and a functional component. A class component has a state and is generally going to be more complex, and a functional component is generally for UI and does not have a state. All of these are going to be class components. So I am first going to import React from React, and then I am going to create a class called landing, and this will extend React.component. And the first thing we need in a class component is a constructor that gets passed in some props. I'm going to call super props. And then this part isn't necessary if we don't have anything in the state. I'm going to create it just so you can see what a general structure would look like, because generally you're going to have a state. And this is where the default state values get placed. So I'm going to create a useless default. I'm just going to call, say, default is crab. Cool. This does nothing yet. This is just an example of what a state could look like. And then every class component must have a render. And this render, I'm going to just make it return a div that says landing. Finally, we need export default landing, which will export this whole thing when it's called. Okay, so this is your very simple bare-bone React component or class component. I'm going to copy this over to dashboard. Call this dashboard. And then I'm going to copy this over to routes. Cool. So right now I have a bunch of components, but they don't do anything and they're not being called by anyone. So this is where React Router comes in. So I'm going to navigate back to my terminal, and we are going to install our first package. So if I navigate to the home of the site, I know it's the home of the site because it says package.json. To do this, you need to be where you can see package.json. So I'm going to say npm install react router DOM. This is my preferred router package. There are many other router packages. I prefer this one because this has the routes in the forms of JSX components. We'll go more into detail later, but in short, this allows for you to render a component that will either like redirect you to the component you want to, or do some other more complex things. As this is installing, another thing to point out is that if I go back to VS Code and I look at my package.json, I have a list of dependencies here. This list of dependencies has React, React DOM, React scripts, a couple other things. And as I'm installing this in terminal, I am both updating my package and my node modules. So the actual files of the libraries are node modules, but we don't need to actually look at node modules because this is very difficult to understand. It has many files, many folders, and frankly, this isn't really readable. But package.json is a readable version of, think of it as kind of like a README of node modules. So great. So we know we installed this with 0 vulnerabilities. Great. And we can see that package.json was updated with React Router because we have added automatically a dependency called React Router DOM, and this is the version. Great. So now if we go back to routes, we want to use this React Router. So I can say import browser router as router. This just renames this to router in this file. We also need to import switch and route. We want to import this all from React Router DOM. Cool. There are other things to import later, but this is the very bare bone skeleton of a routed app. So instead of returning routes, let's return one big router. And inside this router, we are going to have a switch. A switch just guarantees that exactly one route is being called. This is because if we don't have a switch, it might, sometimes if we mess up our logic, it could render landing and dashboard, then we have a big mess. So this just ensures that we're only rendering one route. And then I'm gonna have two routes. So my first route is going to be dashboard, and the second route is going to be landing. Actually, I'm gonna flip the order on that. To call landing, so if we see landing, we have some code here. How do we actually call this landing code? We need to import it. So in routes, I can say import landing from where is landing. So let's poke around a bit. We need to go back a folder. So I can call // which goes back a folder. And I'm going to call landing. And what do I call landing? I'm going to call landing.jsx. The JSX is implicit, so we can actually remove this. And let's do the same for dashboard. Great. And then here, I'm going to call landing with no parameters passed in for now. And same with dashboard. This is where I specify a path. So I'm going to say path equals slash, which is just nothing. And then path equals, let's call this one slash dashboard. All right, great. So now we should be good to go, right? Because we've created a bunch of code. But if I run this, or if you decide to run this on yourself, you'll find that this won't actually do anything. And we've written all this code, and we think it works, but we need to remember that everything is called through index.js. So if we actually trace index.js, it will render app. App is defined in a file called app. And if we look at app, it is still calling our old code. So this is where we need it to call not our old code, but our new code. So here we can say import routes, because everything's going to call routes, which is going to call our pages from, whereas routes should just be in js/routes/routes. Recall that the JSX is implicit. And instead of rendering this old code, I'm just going to render routes with no parameters passed in. Cool. So now I'm in my terminal. Just to check to make sure our package.json's here, I'm going to call npm start. And this should spin up our development server, again defaulting to localhost 3000. This is going to show our old code for now, but as it refreshes, it should show our new code. Alright, so this isn't much, but we can see that localhost 3000 connects to our landing component because it says the word landing. Now, if I type /dashboard, it will still say landing. And you might be thinking this is kind of weird because dashboard should be calling dashboard and not landing. If we go back into our code, we can see that specifically our switch statement will return the first condition that is met. So the first condition, in really all cases, is that if path is equal to slash, which is really just any path. So if I type literally anything, it will say landing because it's calling our landing component. So to fix this, we need to put the keyword exact, and as it sounds like, it has to be exactly this path and it will render landing, else it will continue until it finds one that fits. And then switch just guarantees that it will return exactly one. Great. So if I save and I go back and I delete this, 3000 should go to landing, but if I append a /dashboard, it should render dashboard. So we're good to go. And this is your very basic skeleton for a routed React app. In the next video, we are going to be connecting to Firebase and maybe going over some Material UI. Thanks, and stay tuned for the next video.